welcome to the latest episode of the Moviescramble podcast. This week, we are continuing our 1995 retrospective with a couple of crime dramas that have gone on to become cult classics. Joining me today is someone who's surely been told that he has looks to die for and no doubt has ruthless ambition on his quest for podcast celebrity. It's John. John, how are you?
I'm good. You forgot the fact I've got a penchant for blue dresses as well.
I wasn't going to mention that. I felt that was your story to tell.
Yeah. It's an entirely different podcast series I'm going to be starting. I am good, yes. It's been a couple of weeks since we recorded, so you would think that I would have actually something to say, but we shall see how that actually pans out. How about yourself? How are you doing?
Yeah, really good, and really looking forward to this episode because I hadn't seen either of these films. So I think it'll be fun to talk about them both.
Oh, we didn't know that. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So on today's episode, we have another 30-year-old double bill, and we'll be focusing on To Die For and Devil in a Blue Dress. So let's kick things off with To Die For.
Suzanne would do anything to be famous.
She's going to be the next Barbara Walters.
I believe that Mr. Gorbachev, you know, the man who ran Russia for so long, I believe that he would still be in power today if he'd had that big purple thing taken off his forehead.
To be on television.
You're not anybody in America unless you're on TV.
Was a chance she would die for.
You're on.
Good evening from the WWEN Weather Center.
Weather Center.
Have any of you actually ever been on television before?
To be a star.
You gotta be able to do things that ordinary people wouldn't do.
Was the opportunity she would kill for.
Okay.
And that's exactly what she did.
Directed by Gus Van Sant and written by Buck Henry, the film centres around Suzanne Stone, played by Nicole Kidman, a weather girl on a local TV station who longs to be a high-flying star on network television. When she feels that her husband, played by Matt Dillon, is holding her back, she decides to have him murdered by a teenage boy named Jimmy, played by Joaquin Phoenix. So I think, obviously, the most notable thing is that To Die For obviously explores the obsession with fame and celebrity and media. How do you think the film critiques the culture of celebrity, and is it still relevant to today?
I think it was kind of forewarning on the sort of cult of celebrity more than anything else, because in the 90s, yes, it was around, but it wasn't quite as prevalent as it is. You didn't have sort of the obsession with reality TV that we definitely have now. You only need to look at TV schedules, especially in the likes of ITV2 and E4, to see exactly what's being broadcast in these scripted documentaries and things like that. So yes, and it's all about, you know, people making careers out of this. The one that really kind of annoys me at the moment is Molly May, who is advertising, I think it's not washing up, I think it's detergent tablets, and she comes on and goes, "Hello, it's me, Molly May," and you go, "Fuck off, Molly May, please." And it's all about how she uses these tablets, and it, you know, they really work for her and everything. And you know,
I bet they do.
And you think, well, what have you actually done apart from being on television? And that's kind of it. So that's like an example right off the bat. But yes, it kind of informed exactly where we as a society were going in terms of, you know, building on the 15 minutes of fame that Warhol talked about. And it's like 15 minutes isn't enough. They need to build a career, and you're nothing unless you are successful or a celebrity or known or something like that. What did you think?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting about what you said about how it sort of predicts the future, because that's what I was thinking as I was watching it, because her need is not, she's not got a terrible compulsion to relay the weather. She just wants to be on TV, and she wants to be famous and have the sort of lifestyle that goes along with that. And I think that 90s sort of celeb culture was a wee bit more sort of like National Enquiry, sort of like tabloid journalism, obviously like the phone tapping thing that we had going on in the UK. So it was a different type of celebrity culture. It was almost sort of like designed to trip celebrities up. Whereas now this quest for fame, like if you ask kids now, like in high school, like what do you want to be when you grow up? I bet you a lot of them will say like an influencer or, you know, things like that. So it is a kind of, it's a strange film to watch now, because you do sort of look at it and go, wow, this is exactly, how did they know that this is exactly where we were heading? So I think it's, and obviously we'll go on to talk about the character of Suzanne and stuff like that, but even the fact that the film opens with like all of these headlines and a montage, you know, pictures of her at her husband's funeral and things like that, it does sort of touch on, as I say, that 90s kind of tabloid culture, but it's definitely sets us up on a path as to, you know, this quest for fame, as opposed to, as I say, she doesn't have a real desire to actually, you know, tell the weather. But I also think what this film does really well is the whole notion of sort of like, and I hate using this word because it's very contentious these days, but the whole notion of like portraying gender roles, because it's Suzanne who's like fully in control and is doing all the manipulating. And I think perhaps in the 90s, you know, if we look at like, so for example, like Fatal Attraction or things like that, like, you know, women were portrayed as kind of like hysterical in their manipulation or like, you know, seducers, whereas she is so controlled during this film. I thought it was a really interesting portrayal of women in general. Like, yes, she's dangerous and yes, she's manipulative, but it's a very controlled type of manipulation that she has throughout the film. Do you know what I think?
Yes. If you were being unkind, you would say that she was driven, but that kind of feeds into the whole hysterical aspect as well, because then you're saying that men aren't driven, and you know, which they obviously are, because they push, you know, it's always been expected of a man, especially up until that sort of time, to, you know, push their career forward. You know, you need to have a certain amount of drive in order to succeed. It was the whole Wall Street thing, you know, about making it in big business and everything like that. So, but it's taken us a sort of negative connotation when you're talking about it in terms of a woman doing it. Yes, but yet you're right, she is fully in control of what she's doing. Some of the stuff she doesn't want to do. You can tell that right away, especially when the George Segal characters and things like that, when she's meeting the big executives. And she does come across as being slightly naive at times, but crucially, she learns very, very quickly. She does not, she may make a faux pas at one point, especially like when he was telling the story about a person who did something in order to, and she didn't get it, but she never made that mistake again. There was never another scene where she was seen as being unprepared in any way. In fact, if anything, she was over-prepared, which was very interesting, I thought. And I liked that aspect of it, because it showed that she may not have been the smartest person. None of them were particularly smart, the people that all were interviewed as part of it, but she learned and she knew what she was wanting and she knew how to do what she was doing, and that kind of followed all the way through the film. And her downfall, which we can obviously talk about because it was tabloid headlines at the very start of the film about you know, somebody died, it wasn't really her doing. It was the people around her that actually caused her downfall. So she wasn't the one that made any sort of stupid mistakes, which was very interesting.
I definitely I like that notion of like, the minute she brought someone else into it is obviously she had to cede a little bit of control to that, and that's where the mistakes start happening. But you mentioned there that, you know, she's interviewed, Gus Van Sant uses a sort of like mockumentary style for this film. How do you think that impacts the storytelling and also your perception of the characters as well?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's based around a couple of different elements. Like I say, there's a mockumentary, almost like a talk show, where the parents are on this talk show, and there's also the sort of talking head elements to it, where you've got Suzanne, you've got all of the other characters apart from Larry, because obviously this is done post-marital bliss. The actual TV show element of it, the talk show, flips into the actual story itself. So you get like a film element of it, which is more like a drama. And the way they do that is you have somebody talking and then they finish the sentence and they're actually in the scene, which I thought was very, very clever. And it kind of showed like there was the image that they were trying to portray on television of being like doting parents, but then it would flip round and they would be saying all these sort of racist things about Italians and all sorts of things, which was Very, and the Italian ones were saying the same thing as well. They wanted Larry to marry a nice Italian girl and all this. Obviously, thinking that Suzanne wasn't the right type of person for their son and all this. So yeah, I thought that worked particularly well, and it kept it nice and fresh as well. And you got it from different perspectives, and you realised quite early on that you couldn't trust any single person that was telling you anything because they all had an agenda in this, and they all had an opinion which may or may not have been fact or the truth, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, I really like that as well. And I also really like this notion, particularly with Nicole Kidman's character, that she was sort of always on. So when she's doing her 2 camera pieces, it's, like the, eyes are wide open, the smile is there, that sort of thing. But even when you see her in scenes where she's supposed to just be like, in her house with her husband or like making a dinner for the family, you can tell there's a performance element to that as well, like her desire to sort of portray them maybe as the kind of like local celebrity, like glamour couple or something like that, and that sort of slowly gets unpicked by all of the other stuff that you see during the film. So I thought it was a really interesting way of shooting this. Again, like, it's a very interesting concept in the sense that, the woman is the villain, but she's not like this, hysterical nutter, but it's also done in a sort of like fact-telling way, or as you've rightly pointed out, there are no facts, you can't trust anyone. And obviously at the heart of this, we have Nicole Kidman. Her performance at the time was obviously very widely praised. It has become a bit of a cult classic. I am the first person to admit that in recent years, I have not had a lot of love for Nicole Kidman. I think she does a lot of what I would call whisper acting. Whether she's mad, happy, sad, I don't know. But I think her performance in this film was absolutely outstanding. Like, it's so chilling. I couldn't believe this was like the same Nicole Kidman who, as I say, has just whispered her way through all of her recent projects. What did you think of this performance at the centre of this?
I remember it at the time as I was really looking forward to seeing this film because of Nicole Kidman, because I'd seen her in obviously a few films previously to that. Not so much Days of Thunder, the Tom Cruise driving film, which apparently was meant to be, the F1 was meant to be a follow-up to that. I just read about that quite recently. Initially, it was they were going to do that as a follow-up. Obviously, Tom wasn't available. He was jumping off of stuff.
Flying off a plane, yeah.
Yeah, that kind of idea. Yeah, but I'd seen her in a film called Dead Calm with Sam Neill a couple of years before, and that was a fantastic performance. I don't know if you've seen that. It's Sam Neill and Nicole Kidman. They're a married couple and they're on a boat, and they rescue a guy who is drifting out to sea. I think his boat's sinking stuff, and it's like a 3-hander. It's really tense. It's a brilliant thriller, really, really good. And that was a couple of years before, and that was an excellent performance. So I was kind of looking forward to this, and the fact that this film had been hyped a wee bit beforehand, I thought, yeah, it probably be a good performance, but I was kind of blown away by it because I hadn't seen anything like that. It's just the focus of her performance, like you say, she's always on. And in order to do that without kind of trying to soften it in any way, which would have been an option in some of the scenes to kind of soften her approach, it worked perfectly. I thought she was excellent in this film. And she did carry this film to a certain extent. There was a lot of very good support, let's face it. There was a lot of good actors in there, but she was front and centre, and the film kind of hinged on her performance, her being able to portray this person who was so focused on what she wanted. And I just thought the way that she carried it across, it was like, she was a bit like a Barbie doll at times, I felt, especially with the way that she dressed and she presented herself. It's like kind of overachieving Barbie or something like that.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I did like that kind of aspect as well, because it was all just a facade. There was nothing really. It wasn't the same. It was a kind of a desperate person behind it. But like you say, every time you see her on screen, she's made up. Her hair's always, you never see her with her hair out of place at any time. Even when she's answering the door, I think is it Laura, one of the characters, answers the door to her, and she's perfectly made up. She's like fully dressed and everything. And she's just been in the house, she's not just like slobbing about or anything, fully made up. It's a 24 hours a day, fully on performance, because she realizes that at any time somebody could see her and say, oh, that's not the person. That's, the image is gone, that kind of thing. So the focus on that, and that obviously became part of the performance as well. I just thought, yeah, excellent stuff, really good.
Yeah, it's exactly as you say, that notion of not letting anyone see the real you, because if you can hide behind the mask of like the perfectly coiffured hair and all that, then nobody ever gets in. But I thought like the scene in particular where Larry's talking about how he wants to expand the restaurant and like really like evolve the family business, and she sits and she laughs at him and then she rolls her eyes, and I'm like, that for me was like a really key moment where you got such an insight into that character. Like she's completely disgusted with him. Like she's not interested in anything he has to say. She's simply putting up with him because she thinks it's better for her image to have like a partner. She refuses to talk about, having children. And for God's sake, she engineers their honeymoon so that she can go network in order to try and sort of further her career. Like it's quite a striking character, especially as I say, like I'm thinking of the context of 1995, for a woman to be playing a role like this that's just so brazen and so obvious in their ambitions. Like she completely took my breath away. I was really, really pleasantly stunned by how good this performance was. And as you say, there must have been a temptation at some point to soften this and to give her some sort of like likable, redeemable qualities, but she just doesn't bother. She just keeps her focus on, her sort of like laser vision in terms of her goals. And I thought this was so fascinating. And as you've said, there are some really good supporting performances in there. So to start off with, like, let's talk about Joaquin Phoenix, a very young Joaquin Phoenix, strangely, in his contribution to this film. What did you think of his character?
I thought he was immense in this. For a character that could have been put across as a kind of a caricature, he added so much depth to it, and really kind of unsettling as well. The way that he held himself, the way that he used his expression, used his eyes, it was just very, very intense. And it just, obviously we've seen it time and time again from him over the last 30 years about how good an actor he can actually be. But this is very early on in his career. It's one of his first screen credits. So to produce that sort of performance at that age, I hate saying this, but it's got depth, and it's really well thought out and it's really planned. You can tell that he's kind of dug into this character, and he's a character that is on the outside a bit of a sort of boorish character. It's all front with him, but you get to see his softer side. You get to see behind him. You get to see why he is attracted to Suzanne and want to be around her, because she's clean, more than that's what he says. She's just very, very clean, and I just thought it was absolutely phenomenal, because if you think back and if you'd watched that, it's like watching something like that now and thinking, they're going to have some future. They are going to do some really good stuff, and you can kind of see the initial qualities of him that led him into the likes of Gladiator and like obviously the whole career after that. So it's really, really good. Did you agree, disagree?
He's brilliant in this. Like, I think he is sort of perfect as this kind of like disaffected, marginalized, young man who, as you say, tries to act sort of boorish, and you've got a young Casey Affleck alongside him who is just totally obnoxious. There is no depth to that character.
Yeah.
Whereas like the scenes like that you see when he's dancing in Nicole Kidman's living room, for example, and she sort of moves. Now she's obviously moving closer to him to manipulate him, but at this point he's not thinking of himself as a victim of her sort of machinations. He's just thinking how completely enamored he is with her, and there's such a gentleness in there as well. I was really quite shocked. There is also quite a funny scene as well where he's basically trying to have a wank watching her weather report, so he imagines that she's talking dirty to him instead of like actually delivering which I thought was a fantastic scene, not only because I just didn't think I would ever hear Nicole Kidman say things like that in her little prim and proper Chanel suit or whatever it was, but again it just gave you this sort of notion into who this character was. He was staying up late, he was on his own, he was sort of channel surfing on the couch, he just looked kind of like tired and grubby, and in his head she was this perfect angel sort of on his TV that obviously he found really attractive. So I thought it was a great performance as well. And then we also have Matt Dillon, who is given a bit of a thankless task as Larry, let's be honest. You know, he is just there to sort of be moved around by Nicole Kidman's Suzanne. But I did think that he was quite an interesting character. He obviously was desperate to be a sort of traditional Italian family man with the family restaurant and the kids and the wife and the dog and all the rest of it. But she obviously had different plans. What did you think of his performance in the film?
Yeah, I thought it was good. Like you say, it was a wee bit thankless because he didn't have a lot of agency in the film as a character. But Matt Dillon was able to pull that off, and he used his charm more than anything else in order to get that character portrayal across, because he was coming across like the best looking guy in town. I was introduced early, you could have anybody he wanted, he could have any girlfriend, but he chose Suzanne because he saw something in her that was a wee bit different, whereas the other girls were just girls, and he didn't want to be set up in any way with other girls. He wanted to make his own choices. He was thinking in terms of, it's almost like being the star of the high school football team kind of idea. He's this sort of alpha male. He's got a motorbike that he sits and revs up. And he works in the restaurant, and he's very much a character. He's trying to follow in his father's footsteps in that way. He's not just wanting to run it, he's wanting to be a bigger man, be in charge of things and all that. But he's got a very sort of limited scope about what he wants to do. He's quite happy to stay in the same town. He's quite happy to follow in the restaurant business and do that and take it over and run it. And he's got no real ambitions above that. Whereas when he's with Suzanne, she wanted to be with basically the most popular person in town to begin with, but that was just the stepping stone for her. Once she had that, she was moving on. She wanted to get into television, and she says, I can't even talk to this guy because he knows nothing about television. He knows nothing about how to put a program together or anything like that. So because he wasn't of the same world, and he wasn't particularly interested either. He was more of a house husband when they get married, because he'd be the one who'd be sitting in. He would sit in and watch her do the weather at 11 o'clock at night, but he wouldn't be out, and he'd be drinking more beer. And she does say at one point, you're just getting flabby, it's not
love handles,
all this sort of stuff. But I couldn't really see that with him. I know, obviously, films are shot in a relatively short period of time, so he couldn't really bulk up for it, But the fact that she was dismissive of him because he was of no use to her anymore. Yes. And he was quite happy to accept that. And the performance kind of brought that all in quite nicely, because there was a kind of a forced desperation to the performance in sort of the second half of the film, because he kind of knew that she was slipping away and there was very little he could actually do about it, because it wasn't in his sort of skill set in order to try and make that work. And that came across by the way that he sort of put the performance over. It was a wee bit desperate at times and things like that. But yes, it was all, I thought he was particularly good, but it was very much a second string to Nicole Kidman's performance. He didn't need to do as much, and it wouldn't have been right for him to be a more sort of bigger presence either, because that would have taken away from the main story and the main character as well. So yes, it was a supporting role, but it was quite a memorable supporting role as well. So yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, he does endear your sympathies. I think, like you say, like she body shames him at the family barbecue and stuff like that. And when he talks about having kids, and she's like, well, I can't be pregnant if I'm, running around New York, or what was it? She says, like, I have to cover a terrorist coup in Latin America and things like that. Like, she obviously, her ambitions are national, if not global, where his ambition, he is like the kind of homebody, as you said, like he just wants the nice sort of family routine. But one of the things that really stood out to me, as you've mentioned, is, let's talk about costuming, particularly Nicole Kidman's. It really stands out. Like, she is this, perfectly pastel colored, like floral dream throughout all of this film. Her hair's perfect, her eyeshadow matches whatever she's wearing, but she's in stark contrast to everybody else in that town. So what did you, is that something that you noticed straight away? Like, what did you think of how she was sort of costumed?
It's difficult to avoid it, to be perfectly honest, because everyone else looks kind of normal. They're all wearing normal clothing, a lot of dark clothing, browns, blacks, all that sort of stuff. And you've got Suzanne, who looks as if she's stepped off of the set of Clueless, because she's wearing
exactly
these.
What I have written down.
Yeah, it's so obvious, and obviously it's obviously the style of the time for more popular female looks. It really came into its own in the 90s. A lot of very bright colours and everything, getting away from sort of darker colours. But the darker colour thing is more of a small town look, because Larry's sister dresses down quite conservatively. There's nothing flashy about the way she looks or her hair or anything. But yes, it really stood out. And it was there to emphasize the fact that she was aspiring. She wanted to do more. Yeah. And in order to do more, she had to stand out even in the town. She couldn't, it's like I said earlier, she wasn't just going to switch it on and off. She had to be on all the time. And the look, the full look, the hair, makeup, clothing, the car, the dog, was all part of that. It was all part of this, 24-hour-a-day image that she actually portrayed. So yeah, I thought it was excellent. It was quite subtle, but it was very good.
Yeah, I mean, her costumes were incredible, and I really hope for her sake she got to keep some of them because they were absolutely fabulous. But I just thought it was like she'd been dropped in the wrong place. Like, she's just obviously stood out because she was also like hyper feminine as well, whereas a lot of the other women that you see in the film are not presented in that way. Like, yes, they're maybe wearing like a skirt or whatever, but not the micro mini with the towering heels that she was. There's a sort of like a hyper femininity sort of associated with her look as well. And the film is set in a town called Little Hope, which should tell you everything that you need to know. It definitely walks this kind of fine line between sort of like satire and tragedy. How do you think it sort of maintains that balance throughout?
Well, just by the name alone, let's face it, there was nothing outstanding about the town whatsoever, to the extent that it wasn't featured an awful lot. There was the name of it more than anything else, but there was nothing there that would actually. It's the kind of place that if you've got any sort of ambition at all, you're going to leave. You're going to leave quickly. It's very suburban. It's very normal, hardworking town kind of idea, and you just don't see someone like Suzanne lasting there very long because it's not part of the image. The image is, like, say, Los Angeles, London, Beirut, all this kind of thing, So, yes, and the fact that they only had like a wee small cable channel as well kind of played into that. It's very small. It's just a very small region and everything. So it was a bit of a nothing TV channel, and the people who ran it knew it was a nothing TV channel. There was only there was the cameraman and there was the guy that worked as a producer and the office manager and everything. So it was very much, enclosed. There was zero chance of really anything happening. But the people that were there knew that, and they didn't necessarily care. It was just where they lived, I think, more than anything. That it didn't really feature as part of their identity. Their identity came from family, friends, business, that kind of stuff. But it wasn't to do with the surroundings. What about yourself?
Yeah, I thought it was really funny how like the guys at the TV station basically couldn't understand her burning desire to be on TV, because it literally was one guy sorting the tapes and the other guy sitting behind the desk. I think, like, as I say, the name of the town obviously sort of lends itself to the kind of whole element of satire permeates through the film, and there is tragedy involved there. Obviously there is a death in the film. Obviously Larry is a victim of Suzanne, as is everyone in her sort of like inner circle, but I think it's not a little slice of sort of like cookie cutter Americana. Like the town is just like your normal sort of everyday. It's not perfect, but it's not a disaster either. It's sort of somewhere in between. But as you say, it's one of these kind of small towns where if you've got big dreams, which Suzanne obviously does, then you get the hell out of Dodge, as our compatriots across the board would say.
And there's also a line as well between it, because you have the nice sort of picket fence, whiter than white family, which Suzanne comes from, and you have Larry's family, who are the Italian family. They're more expressive, and they're more sort of working class. You don't know what Suzanne's family does. You know that what she says, I come from a very good family. Yeah. And part of that, you kind of take that Larry didn't come from a very good family in terms of they were horrible or abusive or anything, but they were workers. Yeah. They were more ethnic, if you like. So there was that division without it being black and white. It was being white American, the waspish
Like waspy,
American. Yeah, and the, you know, 4th, 5th generation immigrants who may or may not have dodgy. He actually mentions that, you know, they didn't want our daughter get involved with somebody who was probably in the mafia, you know, and then he says, you know, no offense. And her dad just goes, oh, no, none taken, you know, because he's heard that 1,000 times before.
It's so good. Honestly, there's moments in it that's just so funny. I think from the minute the film starts as well, it's immediately obvious that it's a Danny Elfman score as well when it starts. So what did you think that added to the film? Because I feel like you associate Danny Elfman quite a lot with like Tim Burton movies. I feel like it's quite a left field choice maybe for Gus Van Sant. What did you think of the score?
It was kind of unsettling because, yes, you could tell right away there was this sort of Danny Elfman element to it. It seemed a wee bit sinister and dark, but then suddenly it switched to heavy metal music, and that kind of emphasized what was actually going on the screen, big splashy headlines and everything like that. And that came back because the 3 teens as well, they were into all that sort of music and the dress in leathers and things like that. So it was more sort of proto-grungy kind of thing, like rock music. So he mixed all that in, and I didn't understand that at the beginning because that only get explained when the characters were introduced. I was a wee bit kind of, oh, what's going on here? But yes, he mixed it quite nicely with making stuff around Suzanne almost seem like this sort of dark fairy tale kind of music and things as well, which you're getting this kind of wee pleasant tune playing. And that's a wee pleasant tune, you know. The guy probably spent months composing the damn thing, and I'm calling it a wee pleasant tune. That's ridiculous.
Sorry, Danny Elfman, if you listen.
Yeah. That's one less subscriber that we've got. But yes, that whole thing about, you know, making the music contrasts what's going on. So it's this wee kind of unsettling piece while she's, you know, exerting her ambitions and doing things. So I liked all that, but yeah, it fitted in quite nicely, but I thought it was an unusual choice because I'm used to Danny Elfman, like with Tim Burton doing the Simpsons theme, that kind of thing. And it's that kind of, you know, slightly weird, slightly left field thing that's going on a lot with a lot of his music. So it was a bit different for him. But yeah, I kind of think it worked. But obviously I had to actually watch a bit of the film to understand why.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it worked as well. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there, is you kind of associate him with these sort of like dark fairy tales. And that's definitely what this is. This is, you know, the little princess who dreams big sort of thing. So I think it worked for the story that they told rather.
Yeah, it's not even a cautionary tale. It's really just saying this is what could happen. It's not saying, you know, and there's a way around this. There's no sort of there's no moral in this film saying, see if you do this is what's going to happen. It's just kind of like, this is where things are going and there's nothing you can do about it. So yeah, it's just, you know, it's quite clever in that way.
Yeah. And that in itself is absolutely terrifying if you think about it. Like, there is no option for sort of like good versus evil or good triumphing over evil. It's just like, this is the path that we're headed down and we've started it. So, you know, this is exactly
evil,
where it's
evil, evil.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Were there any scenes in particular that stood out to you during this film?
There was the introduction of James at the very start, where he's speaking to camera and he says, you know, I never used to be that interested in the weather, but now every time it rains or there's thunder or lightning or snow, I have to jerk off. And the interviewer says, no, remember, we're not talking about that. Which I thought that in a nutshell, that was his character. It was really good. And then the scene that you mentioned where Hart and Suzanne and James are together and they're dancing together and all that, and he's really unsure about what's going on. I mean, I just thought that was perfect, the way that she manipulated him, the way that she could understand the buttons to press in order to get him to follow her. And it was something as simple as calling him James, because he'd never been called James by anybody. It was Jimmy, Jim, Bob, all this kind of thing. It was never formally called his name, which he really appreciated, because it was somebody who actually, he thought that was a sign of respect for him, but whereas it was just a manipulation. So it kind of reinforced the dynamic, and it reinforced everything that the sort of film was about her, how she obtained power over people, and how people were willing to be used. There's a wee bit, I talked earlier about the apartment. There's a wee bit in the apartment where the Shirley MacLaine character is talking about life is full of takers and people who get taken. It says the takers just take everything. The taken know that they've been taken, but they do it anyway because they actually want it as well. And that kind of rolled back into this film as well. And it's very sort of telling that these people kind of knew that what they were doing was wrong, but they were willing to go along with it anyway because they had been given the promise of something else in terms of James. He was given, you could be a sports announcer in California, that kind of thing. So so it's just, so those were the kind of standout scenes for me.
That sort of broke my heart when you think about it. It was like she gave him like a little bit of sunshine, and he was like clinging on to that little glimmer that he could be more than, because obviously like he's seen as this sort of like bit of a bum or whatever, like he's not good at school, he's not popular or anything like that, but she sort of like shines her light on him, and he all of a sudden thinks that maybe he could be. When it's so sad, like it genuinely is, like his performance in particular makes you feel so sad for him as to how manipulated he is. For me, I really like the scene where they had like the big family dinner. Like she's obviously on the rise, completely adores her, and the perfectionism of her cooking. Like they all talk about how fancy it is, like all the way the plates are laid out, the food that she serves. But then it cuts to a really quick scene where you talk about there's two deli owners, and they talk about how they delivered it for her. So there's just this little glimpse into like she wants obviously the big fancy dinner, and it has to be perfect, and it has to be like a recipe that was featured by a top chef that she mentions, but actually she's not willing to put in the work. She just wants it to look good. So I thought that was quite a telling little scene as to how her character sort of would evolve throughout the rest of the film, and also quite funny as well, because I'm sure we've all put a wee extra bit of sprinkles on a bought cake at a cake sale and shoved it in.
Yep. Well, there's that advert. It's an advert for pasta. It's on the TV at the moment, and they've kind of flipped it around. It's the guy who makes the pasta for the family. And they're all sitting there going, "Oh, this pasta's lovely. It's just like Mama's pasta." And she's sitting there, and they have a conversation later on, and they both use the same packet pasta. That kind of thing. So it's pretty much the same, and it's wanting to have a front where you're perfect at everything. You can do everything, and it's important in order to progress your own ambitions or your own self-esteem or whatever. It's quite clever, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good wee scene. I can honestly say that I completely understand why this has become a cult classic for all the reasons that we've talked about: the performances, the costume, the score, all that sort of thing. Is there anything else you'd like to add about your enjoyment levels of this film before we move on to our next?
David Cronenberg in it as well. Did you notice him?
No, I did not.
David Cronenberg is the man at the lake, who I think he's a friend of Gus Van Sant. And he features briefly in it. Obviously, Cronenberg is still around. He just had a film that came out a couple of months ago called The Shrouds. So he has this small role in it, which is quite a pivotal small role because it explains kind of like the kind of the third act in it as well. So yes, I enjoyed that wee sort of cameo role in there as well because it's quite unexpected. Yeah. And in terms of the other characters, I really liked Illeana Douglas in this. I thought she was fantastic. I liked the way that she was introduced, because she was introduced during Suzanne's opening monologue to camera. And she's on the ice rink and she falls down when Suzanne introduces her at first. But then when she's introduced properly, she skates up to the screen and plants the ice skates, and she stops perfectly. So it's like different perceptions of like different characters. She thinks that her sister-in-law is a bit of a fuck up, and all she can do is sort of ice dancing and stuff like that. But when you actually see her portrayed, it's perfect the way that she's introduced and everything. And I really liked that character because she was like regarded as being like a normal person.
Yeah.
Where she wasn't, she was involved in ice dancing and stuff like that. So it was, it's
Sorry to all
not
our ice
normal at
dancer
all.
subscribers as well. That's another corner of our audience.
There we go. Yeah, they're all going, the mousecapades. Contingent of our audience, that's them gone. So yes, but yeah, I did like her. I thought she was noteworthy, and I've seen her in a few things, and she's always very good. But she's never really kind of reached those sort of heights. But I thought that performance here was really good as well. What about yourself? Did you have anything?
I will just add, actually, I really like the the funeral scene as well. Like Nicole Kidman standing there, the pink lippy, the sunglasses on, clutching her dog, and then she puts on Eric Carmen's "All by Myself" on the little boombox that she's brought along. It's moments like that are so ridiculous and so over the top that you just think this film was fucking nuts, but like in a good way, not in a way that takes you out of it. Like it just adds to the character that she is sort of building up, and you just think, imagine having the balls to walk into your husband's funeral, the husband that you've had bumped off, and put on this big, again, it's just another big display, isn't it? So I just thought that was absolutely class. I thought that was so good. So moving on then to our next film, which is Devil in a Blue Dress.
So, you want the job?
It depends on what kind of job it is.
I'm just looking for somebody. Daphne Monet, fiance of Todd Carter. She likes jazz and pig's feet and dark meat. Know what I mean?
An offer he should have refused.
Why don't you tell me about your friend Daphne?
Colored woman ain't good enough for you no more, Hines.
What time did you leave Greta James' house this morning?
What do you mean?
She's not going to be waking up, Ezekiel.
A mystery no one wants solved.
The incumbent mayor, the chief of police, close personal friends of mine.
That's good, Mr. Carter, and they can help us find it.
No, they can't.
In a world divided by black and white.
What do you know about a dead white man in a cabin over in Laurel Canyon?
Easy Rollins has just crossed the line.
This is Daphne Monet. You looking for me?
This was directed and written by Carl Franklin, based on a Walter Mosley novel, and the film centres around Ezekiel Easy Rollins, played by Denzel Washington, an African-American World War II veteran who is looking for work in LA in 1948. At his friend's bar, he is introduced to DeWitt Albright, played by Tom Sizemore, who is looking for someone to help him find a missing white woman assumed to be hiding somewhere in LA's black community. Easy innocently accepts Albright's offer. However, he quickly finds himself amidst murder, crooked cops, ruthless politicians, and a Chandler-esque whodunit. So that's, I feel like, a sufficiently interesting introduction to this film. Mm-hmm. And obviously, as we kick off and we talk about the different characters in this film, this also has a really interesting opening sequence. It's sort of like it's blues music, and there's sort of close-ups of artwork on a canvas depicting people of colour at the time, sort of at work and leisure in a bar. What did you think of that as a sort of introduction to the film?
I kind of took that as a bit of a life's rich tapestry. There's always so much going on in people's lives, and it was busy, and there was lots of colour, lots of people. It kind of set you up for a film that was going to be full of that, because it immediately went from that into a city scene where it was just like a corner of Los Angeles, and it was mobbed. There was loads of people doing lots of things, but set during the daytime rather than the actual picture being set at night, in the introduction and the title. So I kind of think that's why it was doing that, but I don't know. It could possibly be a number of things. What was your interpretation?
I just thought it kind of set up a sort of take on the noir genre. There was lots of sort of like smoky bars and women in vibrant dresses, that sort of thing. So I felt like it was sort of like easing you into the type of film it was going to be. But as you say, the sort of mural itself is very vibrant, and there's a lot going on. And this film certainly has a lot going on as well, a lot of sort of red herrings and things like that. So I felt like it was just kind of setting you up for the type of film that you were going to see, maybe.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Yep, absolutely.
And obviously it kicks off with the economy essentially being discussed as essentially bad if you are a young black man at the time in 1940 in LA. How do you think the film sort of explores the sort of post-war racial dynamics in Los Angeles? Because obviously Denzel Washington's character Easy has served, but he's found out that that doesn't actually mean anything in terms of his ability to sort of secure down a life that he obviously wants. How do you think the film sort of looks at the racial tensions that go on in this era?
Oh, it's very much up front, because he says quite early on that, yes, he did serve. He represented his country. He was out there, he fought for his country. But when it comes down to it, when the dust actually settles from that, then all the old ways come back in, and there's very much a dividing line between white and black people. The scene where he's getting laid off, he's trying to explain to his boss that, he comes in, he does the extra shifts, he works away, but, if one of his white colleagues phones in sick or can't be bothered, then that doesn't matter, but he gets kicked to the curb because they can't justify the numbers. It's always his type of person that gets booted first. There is no equality. There's no loyalty to people who have actually done something and stood up for their country in a time of war. It's just quickly forgotten, and they're back to the way they were before. So, and it in that scene, he initially is trying to just get his point across, but he gets angry as well, because he knows that no matter what he says, nothing is going to change. So yes, I thought that was quite prominent early on, and that kind of set everything up in terms of being a divide, a line, if you like, between white people and black people, especially in Los Angeles, which, continues to this day, let's face it.
Yeah. It actually, in a weird way, made me think of Sinners. Like the characters, obviously, that Michael B. Jordan plays in that film, Smoke and Stack, they have served in World War One in that film, and they come back and they find out that it's every bit as segregated as before, which I thought was quite an interesting sort of take on things as well. I also thought that the scene where Easy is on like the boardwalk and he just goes up and starts chatting to the young white girl, and you just know as soon as her friends clock it that there's going to be violence, and that made me feel like really tense throughout this film, because obviously he's been given this task of tracking down this girl, but in order to do that, he's going to have to speak to some people that, as far as others in the community are concerned, he shouldn't be speaking to. Why should a black man be speaking to a white woman? Like, that would not be the done thing at that time. So it adds a whole other layer of tension to a film that already is quite tense. It's sort of detective noir adjacent, but they're adding in these sort of racial elements as well. And I also thought,
it's very much noirish, because if you think back to the sort of earlier noir films, you have the private detectives called Seamuses. So it's like you've got your nice folk and you've got your Irish immigrant folk as well. So there is that kind of line, but yes, everybody's white in those sort of situations. So yes, it is slightly different, but yeah, it does come across in the same way.
And there's also this sort of kind of fallacy about the American dream that I think the character of Easy really looks at, especially when there's a shot at the beginning of the film and also at the end where he sort of like looks down his street. And initially, you've got families that are moving back to Texas, for example, because they just can't find any work. So they're better off sort of moving to try and sort of improve their economic situation. And he looks around the street and he sees it's a little bit tired. But then at the end, there's obviously quite a contrast to that. What did you think about that kind of told you about the character and his setup and the world that he's sort of living in? Because I think they're two quite prominent shots in the film. They obviously sort of linger on them for a point.
Yeah, in a way, it is very much the American dream, because the first thing that Easy did after he came back from the war was get enough money together and put a down payment on a house. So he was actually a homeowner. Rather than somebody who just rented. And it was noted that was quite unusual for that time, for black people to actually own their own home. And he was very proud of that. He loved that house. He loved driving up to the house. He kept it nicely. You could see at one point he was like making sure the path was clean and everything like that. So he took a certain amount of pride in his environment. Yes, there were people moving back and forward. And the whole reason behind everything that he did in that film was to keep his house more than anything else. He didn't want to lose that. He needed money because he was behind with his mortgage payments. And the whole film, if you boil it down to that, is
Yeah.
You know, he didn't have money, he needed money, and the reason he needed money was to fulfill his idea of what the American dream is more than anything else. And those shots played very nicely into that, because at the start wasn't so much hope or anything, but at the end, yes, there was very much, because he's smiling, he's chatting to his neighbours, he knows everybody. It's very much a community, and there's like kids playing in the street and all this sort of stuff. So yes, it was a little heavy-handed in that, but yes, he got the point across quite nicely.
Yeah. What did you think of the pacing of the film? Did you think it sort of held your attention the entire time? Was there too many red herrings? Like, how did you feel like it actually runs as a narrative?
A film noir, by its very existence, has a number of red herrings in it, so you are going to be taken down a few different paths. So you expect that. Now, this film is 100 minutes long. It doesn't waste any time as far as I'm concerned, because the pacing of it is fairly consistent all the way through. He's on the hunt, he's looking for this woman, he's going to different places, and everything that he does is a consequence to it. There's no wasted scenes. Everybody he speaks to leads him on to either somebody else, or it leads him on to someone coming to him in order to get him. So I felt it worked very well in that respect, and it didn't really waste any time. 100 minutes, you're not going to waste any time. If you had that extra 20 minutes to make up to a 2-hour runtime, then yes, you could introduce a bit of flab. There was bits cut out of it in order to keep it tight as well. There was a sex scene cut out of the film because they didn't feel it was necessary for the plot, and it kept the runtime nice and tight as well. So they obviously wanted to make the best film that they could, but they didn't just want to have things like these kind of things. And obviously they filmed it because they thought it would be included. But then when they actually edited it, says, no, we don't need this. And that was like 5-10 minutes right away they cut out of the film. So yeah, I think it worked very well in sort of terms of length and pacing.
Yeah, I was worried initially that it was going to be one of these films where Easy goes to a place, finds out a piece of information, comes back home, goes to another place. And to a certain extent, there is a little element of that as he's tracking down, obviously. But as you say, there's so many red herrings in this film. Like, people that turn up dead. That was a bit of a CSI Miami-ism. Like, they're just dead. That's it. Characters that you thought were going to be quite prominent, die within the next scene. Or there's a whole subplot about paedophilia and stuff that I'm sure we'll go on to when we're talking about it. It's quite intense for 100 minutes. There's a lot going on. It's definitely one of these films where I feel like you have to really pay attention, because if you are diddling or you're on your phone or whatever, you're going to miss something that's going to be really important, a couple of scenes down the line. So I do think it is quite tight. And at the time, Carl Franklin's direction was sort of praised for its subtlety and atmosphere, which obviously is a big part of the noir genre. Does this feel like a full-on noir to you, or do you think he's going for something slightly different?
I think he takes into consideration the whole noir aspect of it, but he does update it because he made a conscious decision not to have like lots of like shadows and lights coming through slats and all this sort of stuff to emphasize that he used more the sort of the color palette and the cinematography to emphasize certain elements that made it a noirish film. A lot of it was shot at night, that kind of thing. There was very strong elements there. But I think he consciously didn't want to have it purely labelled as that type of film. Now, it did obviously get labelled in that way, and there was a whole sort of neo-noir thing going on around that time, but obviously playing into that, because the book itself is very much that 1948. It's right sort of smack bang in the middle of when these types of films were made, so it feels that way. But it does play into it, and the fact that they use voiceover as well. Yeah. Again, another characteristic of that type of film, but they use it sparingly. So it's not the main emphasis, so that there's room for other things to actually come in and work with it.
Yeah, and I think, don't get me wrong, there's lots of like smoky bars, intense close-ups, Easy at one point, is the toothpick chewing PI with a tiny notepad, and, so there is a little bit of like trope going on there, but I think the decision to obviously tell a story that's, about the Black experience at that time just makes it different by sort of definition. And as you say, there are kind of, elements of noir, like the voiceover and things like that. But it also kind of feels like a sort of, like a classic Hollywood sort of melodrama at times as well. There's good guys, there's bad guys, and there's, dames in nice dresses essentially, which
Yes.
is, the heart of this film. So I think it sort of plays around with the genre sort of loosely at the edges of it without, as you see, leaning in too heavily to the sort of dark and light and shadows and all that sort of thing. So I think it does a really good job, actually, of a sort of subtle take on the genre for sure. And of course, at the heart of it, we have Denzel Washington playing Easy Rollins. What did you think of his performance in this role?
He is very much the film star persona in this role because, I mean, the guy can rock a vest. Let's face it.
My God, it is the most stunning set of arms in a vest I've ever seen. I'm so glad we talked about this.
Because usually with these type of films, it's easy just to put people in very sort of flash suits and everything. And obviously private detectives are known for wearing the suits, three-piece suits, and like having the hats and all this sort of stuff. So yes, he does have a hat occasionally, but most of the time he's wearing just a wee jacket they actually he wore to work. And underneath it is a vest and a set of braces, and he doesn't carry a gun or anything like that when he's. And it's just, well, a lot of the initial sort of Denzelisms come through. The way he walks, for instance, he's got a very distinctive walk, and he uses that in quite a lot of his films. It's a sort of it's not so much a shuffle or anything, but it's very purposeful, and it's very sort of commanding. You're kind of drawn to the way he looks, and he does that a few times, and it's only emphasized by the fact that he's, he doesn't have anything on apart from a vest at the time. So yeah, it works really, really well. And I just thought he was immense in this film because at that sort of point in his career, he had reached stardom. He'd won an Oscar. So he was right at the sort of top of his game. So he could be doing roles that he wanted to do. And obviously he was very interested in doing this role because he was involved in like an earlier incarnation of the role. He was attached to it right from the start. Right, okay. So he was very much interested in this character. And you could tell by the effort that he actually put into his performance and the way that he brought Easy to the screen, because I like the fact that the character's called Easy, but nothing that he's involved in is easy at all. Nothing he has been involved in. He went to war. He was working. He got fired from his job, and he was desperate for work. So there's nothing easy about the situation he's in, and yet he's got this. He just kind of glides along. He doesn't judge people automatically, but he's got a very keen sense of what's wrong if there's a problem. But sometimes he has to actually go along with things because, like I said earlier, he needs money. So that kind of overrides all of his kind of spidey senses, even though he thinks, something's not quite right here. He goes for it. He just has to do it. And yeah, just brilliant. It was really good. And I really liked his wee pencil moustache as well, which is a bit of an aside, yeah.
Oh, he's just so handsome in this. I really like how the character sort of alternates between fear and barely holding it together, and then this sort of like power and cockiness, but it's all very dependent on his treatment by others. So we get a sort of different version of Easy depending on who he's interacting with. And I thought that was a really interesting element of the character, because as you say, it boils down to essentially this guy needs to pay his mortgage, so he doesn't need to take on this dangerous job that essentially he's entered into. But it's really fascinating how, like, for example, when he gets taken in by the two detectives who suspect him of Coretta's murder, and they're racist and violent and sort of willing to frame him, and we see him look quite vulnerable and quite terrified by the whole experience. But then, conversely, a few scenes later, he's calling the shots and he's cocky and he's in someone's face and he's got there's a change to his frame. And I just thought the way he plays that racial element through the character, I thought was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, he's a character who's able to straddle the line between the white community and the black community, and he knows what's expected of him in both areas. And the whole point of him getting the job is he's able to go to places that a white PI, or in this case Albright, you don't actually know who Albright is.
Yeah.
So Easy is able to go into his own community and be asking questions and actually get answers and actually find out things. Well, not terribly successfully at first, because he says he probably gave away more information than he actually got, with his first encounter. So he's learning as he's going along, because he's not a natural private detective either. He's just somebody who's, he knows how to speak to people and how to get along, and he obviously has a large group of people that he knows. He's part of his local community, but he's also part of this wider sort of black community in bars and all these sort of places. So he does know an awful lot of people, and he's able to work that. But like you say, when he goes into the more polite society, when he turns up at the house in order to try and figure out what's wrong, he's wearing a shirt and tie, and he's very well put together. So he knows, not so much knows his place, but he knows what he needs to do.
He knows the rules of the game, really.
Yeah,
he
exactly,
learns a bit like the Nicole Kidman character. He learns quickly how he's going to survive. Essentially, the supporting cast is made up of the likes of Don Cheadle, Tom Sizemore, Jennifer Beals. It's a fairly stacked set of names. What did you think of all of their? I mean, this is the Denzel show. Let's just be clear. But what did you think of all their performances?
Jennifer Beals was okay in this. I don't think she had enough to do in order for her character to really push it. Her performance was okay. It was fine, but again, it was for her being the character of the title, Devil in a Blue Dress. She wasn't really. She was more. It was almost like a MacGuffin in a role kind of thing. She was the thing that everybody was trying to get a handle on more than anything. And by saying thing, I'm not putting her down in any way.
But I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. It was what she was and what she knew that everybody was interested in. Whereas the character of Mouse, played by Don Cheadle, is just, it's like chef's kiss. That's just a perfect performance. It's interesting that Don Cheadle initially thought he was too young to play the part of Mouse, a contemporary of, because Mouse and Easy are supposed to be roughly about the same age, and I think Don Cheadle was about 10 years younger than Denzel Washington. I say at that point they still are, obviously. I don't think he's caught up with him. I don't know why I was going to say that. But he initially thought he was too young for the performance, and it was Carl Franklin that persuaded him, brought him in, said, do a screen test and everything. And I have this in Blu-ray, Devil in a Blue Dress. It's a nice sort of restoration print and stuff. And his screen test is actually on there, and the power that he actually pushes across. It's the scene where Mouse is introduced as a character, actually, when he comes in and saves Easy from getting his throat cut. And it's that scene that he does as a screen test, and it's immensely powerful. And they were able to make it in such a way that it made him look a wee bit older and everything, so he kind of fitted in with that. I thought he was fantastic in the show. I liked the way that the character was built up, because they talked about this character of Mouse for the first hour of the film. Without introducing, he was never on screen. It was just pretty much on the hour mark that he actually came into it. So he was only in the film for maybe about 20 minutes or something. There wasn't an awful lot of time in there, but I thought he was absolutely immense in this. An interesting wee aside, there was a previous version, like I said, there was a previous version of this being developed, and it was Jonathan Demme that was involved on it. That's how he's got a producer credit. It's through his production company that this one came out. But they had decided that the character of Easy and Mouse was going to be one character. They blended them into one. They were blending them into one performance, so that you would have this more traditional male lead, in that he was very clever, but he could, switch over to action and sort of very powerful and violent, and that would all be within the one character. Whereas where it's written in the books, and where obviously is in this film, it's two distinct characters, and Easy calls on Mouse when there's stuff to be done that he isn't capable of doing.
Of course. Yeah.
So I think they kind of dodged the bullet by not making that version.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I mean, he bursts into the screen, with a gun in his hand and a mouthful of sass. Like, he's so impactful. And as you say, he's actually only on screen for about 20 minutes, but he's such a memorable character. And because Easy is not a PI, and we don't even know what kind of action he saw in World War II. He may have never even seen a dead body before. Like, we don't know.
Yeah.
Like, his experiences. So of course he needs this other person to come in and sort of do the tidy up and the hard stuff that he's just not capable of. It seems mad that you would want to combine those two characters when they're so different and they both bring something entirely different to the film. Well, I'm glad that's it.
Yeah, because there's a bit where they are taking, is it Joffrey? Yeah, or Juffy, whatever his name is, the bar owner. And when there's a bit of a shootout and stuff, and Easy comes out and he says, "Where's Juffy?" And you see him lying over there, and he says, "Well," and Mouse says, "You know, of course I was going to kill him, because why would you leave me with him otherwise if you didn't want me to kill him?" So yeah, having this as one character just would not work. It just wouldn't be this. You know, you would lose the essence of both of the characters in order to just have this cipher of a person who just doesn't work at all. So what about the other characters in there? What do you think of them?
So you have Tom Sizemore's Albright, who, as you've said, you don't really know his background or why he's seeking down this girl, because it becomes clear sort of about an hour into the film that he doesn't have the authority to have set up this manhunt, as it were. So you don't really know what and I think his character is really quite menacing. Like, he does that, he interferes when Denzel Washington's character is about to have his arse handed to him by the two young white men who think that, you know, he shouldn't be talking to a white girl. But then he takes it one step further and he's like, you know, making the guy get down on his knees and apologize and kiss his hand and all this sort of thing. And Easy's like, stop it, like, that's enough. So you get this flash of this character being so violent and not knowing where the line is between, like, right, you've stepped in and you've stopped a bad thing from happening, but now you've just taken it to, you know, the nth degree. And when we see that he has Jennifer Beals' character kidnapped as well, before Denzel Washington goes to intervene, it looks like they're about to brand her with a, you know, roasting hot poker. So he's clearly a man with this sort of like crazy-eyed penchant for violence, but you're never sure where he comes from and who's, you know, why is he on this manhunt and all this sort of thing. So I like that element of the character, that he just seemed like a complete fucking wild card, but there was no explanation to it as well. I enjoyed that. Did you feel the same way about him, or?
Yes, because you got, like you say, you had the threat when he was introduced. It was very kind of subtle, but yes, then he went from 0 to 60 when we were on the pier and everything. That's the kind of standard noir character right there. It's the sort of crazy eyes character, the one that will do something really violent from nothing. There won't be any build up to it. It just happens, and that's all part of the personality. And I thought that was a great role, because he didn't overplay his hand. It wasn't like twirling moustache or anything. He didn't come across as being evil. He just came across as being like ruthless and efficient. That's what he did. That's what his job was. He had two guys there as well who were totally under his command, because he said to him at one point, "Shoot him, shoot Easy," and he put the gun up and he says, "I'm only kidding." You know, so they would do exactly what he says. So he had this menacing presence at all times, and he was ruthless in what he did. And he knew exactly how to manipulate people. He was very much like the Suzanne character to Die For, because he knew how to manipulate a situation, manipulate people. He was manipulating Easy because he knew Easy needed money. He obviously needed information that he couldn't get firsthand. He would not get anywhere near it. And that was emphasised by the fact that when Easy went into town and went to the speakeasy, there was a white guy there who was trying to get upstairs into the bar, and he wasn't being allowed because, you know, no, nothing up there for you to see. You know, this isn't your sort of place. So yeah, I thought it was particularly good. It's a very, very clever role.
And it just sort of fleshes out, as I say, there's a layer of menace throughout this film anyway, because there's all these different like racial elements, and there's you know, machinations of power and corrupt ex-mayors and mayor-elects and all that. So there's a layer of menace in this film anyway, and Tom Sizemore just sort of turns that up to 11 with his performance. The film was actually supposed to be part of a series based on Walter Mosley's novels, but this never came to fruition because this film doesn't actually perform that well at the box office when it came out. Would you have liked to have seen more of these characters, sort of a what happens next or another case for Easy? Would you have liked to have seen a series or a franchise of these types of films?
Yeah, there was A couple of TV series, muted one right back to 1998. I think so. It was just off the back of this film, just a couple of years after it. And that never got off the ground. And they've obviously tried to do a couple of other films as well, which again, never happened. The most recent one was Amblin Entertainment in 2021. Apparently announced that they were going to be doing a TV series based on the Walter Mosley Easy Rawlins books. And as to date, obviously that hasn't happened. I was trying to read up on it, and there wasn't anything after that to say it had been cancelled or shelved or whatever. But I think the fact that it's 4 years down the line and nothing has actually happened, I would have loved to see more of this type of thing, because I read most of the Easy Rawlins novels.
Did you?
Yeah. I like sort of noirish books anyway, like Raymond Chandler and all these kind of things. So this was a kind of, it had been recommended because it was one of these, if you like this, then you'll possibly like that. Just when Devil in a Blue Dress came out, because that was the first Easy Rawlins book, and I think I've maybe read like 6 or 7 of the novels, and some of his other ones. He's had other series as well, but I could never understand why they never did any more of them, either on film or in like sort of short form TV show, sort of like the way that they're doing Slow Horses, 6 episodes, covers the book. It gives enough space to actually tell the whole story. It would be perfect for that sort of thing. I think what holds it back is the fact it's period setting and everything. It would be expensive to do it. I mean, you've only got to look at the film and the number of cars and period pieces that are actually in that film.
Cars were gorgeous.
Yeah, so I would have really liked to have seen more of it. And based on the fact that this has turned into a film that is has a cult following, I think there would be an audience for it. And there's always an audience for kind of crime adaptations anyway. So I really don't understand why it didn't come to fruition. I really don't.
Yeah, I was quite shocked at that as well, because I thought, Denzel Washington sort of at the height of his star power as well. If they'd chosen to go on and make more films with him, he'd have been, a big draw. There's obviously more, like this case is solved or resolved, whatever you want to call it. There's obviously more, almost like what you were talking about, like a Poirot or a Columbo, a different story every, week or every film or something like that. You could have seen that sort of playing out quite nicely, bringing in sort of different side characters or whatever to flesh it out. So I am surprised that this didn't do well enough that they thought it was worth investing in. But interesting that there was something as recent as the 2020s that this has been mooted again for adaptation. It may well come about. There's been a lot of writer strikes and stuff like that during that time. Maybe things have just ground to a halt sort of temporarily, but it would be something that we picked back up. I think the likes of Slow Horses and stuff like that has proved that there's very much an appetite for this sort of thing. It would just be whether or not they could, land the casting, all that sort of thing, make sure the story was right. But yeah, I just thought that was quite an interesting wee nugget that it just never really came to anything.
Who do you think should be in the lead?
Oh, that's a good question.
Now, bear in mind that the books run from 1948 into the mid-60s. So there's a lot of, obviously, progression and Easy goes through various jobs apart from being a private investigator. He's a janitor at school at one point into that. So, but it's all obviously PI stuff off the top of your head.
Someone like Daniel Kaluuya would be quite a good lead, because he could do this. He's not necessarily an action star, but that character isn't either. So you bring in someone else maybe to fill that sort of role. But someone like he's got a great American accent. I didn't realize he was English for his first few films either. But he's got that sort of charisma that Denzel Washington has, that you could see him lending a sort of like swagger but an intelligence to the role as well. You could see someone like him doing it justice, I think.
How about John David Washington?
Oh, of course, he's got a son. I mean, I don't know if that would help the Nepo baby discourse, would it? But I mean, by all means, it would carry that legacy on absolutely flawlessly if he was, and he actually does sound like his dad. So it would be, it would almost seem like madness not to. But here's me trying to find someone else.
Yeah, and somebody else who would look good in a vest would be Michael B. Jordan as well.
Oh, I mean, he looks good in all of the clothes or none of the clothes, and I think that's a story for another day. So, were there any particular scenes that stood out to you as your favourite in this?
I really liked the opening scene of Easy sitting in the bar. I just thought that was perfect because the way that he was holding himself, and you had the voiceover about how he needed money, and he hadn't done anything. He'd been searching for work for 3 weeks. I just liked that whole thing. And he was just sitting there and he was smoking, and he was just very relaxed, even though there was an awful lot going on. And obviously that's where everything kind of started. He was introduced to Albright in that scene as well. And the whole point of, like, I know I talk about people doing stupid things an awful lot, and it kind of grates with me, but he was aware that he was doing something stupid, but he had to do it anyway. He was justifying it in his own mind by saying, I know this isn't right. There's something wrong here. There's something going on. I'm probably being used, but I have to do it anyway because I've got nothing else going. I just like that whole scene. I thought that was perfect. The way that it's you have that, and then everything else goes, whoop, right, there we go. We're following on from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like that scene as well. I thought it also just gives you he just looks so cool as well. I also really like the scene where he goes to confront the sort of mayor-elect who's dropped out of the race. And they talk about, the Jennifer Beals character, and he's like, look, I'm never going to marry her. I don't know what she thinks, but that's not going to happen. And then you've got the whole subplot of, as I say, the sort of mayor-elect challenger who is a pedo, and he's got all these dirty photographs of kids. But I just thought that was very poignant of the time. Like, Jennifer Beals' character is so convinced that she's going to have this great big love affair and they're going to live like this perfect little life, but actually society is telling him, no, that's not going to happen. So I thought that was quite sad, but also it just furthers this notion that Easy is aware of the rules of the game as well. Like, he knows what the position of African Americans are in society and the machinations of all the sort of like white power. And when I say power, I mean like as in like the powers that be, and how they're running the town. His experiences with the police tell him that. The danger that he sees of Albright tells him that. And so this notion that, this mayor-elect is going to do something good, well, no, he's just as bad as everybody else. That just, you sort of see the last elements of that dream sort of crumble out the window. So I thought that was really powerful as well. But I definitely think it's a film that, I would love to see more of it. And I'm actually quite sad that there hasn't been, these follow-ups or sequels, or, as you say, even a TV series, because I think it's a character that's definitely really interesting. And I think given everything that's going on in the world right now, the allegories as to, corruption of power and the way the police run their departments and things like that, it would make for a very sort of poignant viewing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's an awful lot of scope for bringing in elements that are modern into it and putting them into that sort of period setting. So, yes, I think it would. And like we say, a lot of things don't change. Things run in cycles.
Unfortunately.
So, yes, absolutely. So, yes, I think it would work very well. So, please, somebody get on it.
Yes.
Get this sorted, please.
Whatever one of our subscribers has the power, do it.
Yeah. It does seem really weird, considering they're always looking for properties to adapt and turn into, especially like prestige TV shows, why they haven't done something like this. And I just don't get it. Because Walter Mosley is up for it. He's always been quite interested. He's usually involved in these, he doesn't impose himself. He was burned quite heavily on the first one that we talked about earlier, where they were wanting to change all the characters. But he worked very closely with Carl Franklin on this, and he was very supportive of the choices that Franklin made in terms of like changing some of the story elements and things like that, and obviously cutting it down so it was just 100 minutes, because I think the books are in about 350 pages, so we obviously had to shrink some elements. If you read the synopsis of the book, it is slightly different to the way that the story is. Easy comes across as being a slightly harder character as well, in terms of like the way he interacts with some of the people. So especially Daphne as well. It's a slightly different way that he treats her as well in the book. So yeah, it's interesting that these elements are the kind of thing that would come out if you did like a TV adaptation. Although, having said that, there was that Marlowe adaptation of the TV show, wasn't it? And it was was it Marlowe? I can't remember. No, it was Rhys. Is it Rhys Davies, the Welsh actor? And it was a noirish 1930s set thing, and it was on Sky, and it was really good. Lasted a season, completely died. It's just,
no,
it's just not so good. So was it Matthew Rhys? I can't remember his name. Anyway, yes.
Oh, Matthew Rhys, yes, he is a Welsh actor, yeah.
Yes, it was just one of these things that you just maybe it just doesn't capture the imagination that you're actually looking for, and I think, which is a bit of a shame. You know, it would be nice if I'm just Perry Mason. That's what it was.
Oh yes, he remade that. Yeah, because that was a show in like the 60s and 70s, wasn't it? And he remade it.
Yes, he remade it, and it pulled it back to Perry Mason as a younger lawyer. So it was set in the sort of 40s, 50s kind of thing, and it was more film noir type of thing. It was, and it worked really well. It was good. I enjoyed it, but it's just one of these things. That's the kind of thing you think, oh, that could run, but yeah.
No.
It's a bit of a shame.
And it all boils down to this notion of just too much stuff, and numbers, making decisions as opposed to an audience's love for a show.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame, unfortunately, but it's the way it is. There was another wee thing. All the backgrounds for Devil in a Blue Dress, obviously, it was period detail intense, but Carl Franklin, I had watched an interview with him, and he said he wanted to make sure that it fitted the time. And this is something that we talk about quite a lot, in that when you see a film and it's set in a particular period, like if you see a 60s film, and it's all like people from swinging 60s and all this, and everybody's wearing psychedelic clothes, whereas the majority, 99% of the people, were just wearing ordinary clothes and doing ordinary things. And they didn't all have like G-Pan furniture and stuff like that. It was just all their hand-me-downs. That's what he said about this film, that he made sure that this was a period of austerity just after the war. People didn't have a lot of money.
Of course.
All the cars that were featured weren't cars from the late 40s. They were all cars from the 1930s and the early 40s, because people couldn't afford new cars.
And they held on to everything that they had.
It wasn't particularly period. It was before the period, because that reflected the fact that people didn't have that sort of thing. They didn't have the money.
But that is so clever, though. Like, that goes beyond, Matthew Weiner insisting that ice cubes had to be square shaped because they didn't have round dispensers back, and it goes beyond that to be aware of not just the time period that you're working in, but the sort of social and cultural implications of that time period. So and the whole point of this film is that everyone's skint, right? So they would have been holding on to clothes and cars and all that. That is so clever. That's amazing.
And that's not something I would ever pick up on unless I'd read or listened to that interview, because, well, I don't know all that much about cars of the period. You get that in some things. It's interesting. The Sunday Times Culture magazine, they've got the sort of TV section, and they've got a wee bit called the You Sayers, and it's like you say, and somebody writes in and they talk about, how much they hated the BBC coverage of the proms or whatever, people moaning. But anytime there's a period drama, you get somebody writing in saying, oh, the B427 Routemaster bus that was featured in Call the Midwife was not period appropriate. It didn't come into service until 2 years after that particular episode was set, and all this kind of thing, and or
why is that my husband?
But yeah, I don't have that sort of level of
me neither.
So that's why I would never pick up on the fact that a car in a film that's set in 1948 is actually 10 years old, and most of them are, because so yes, it's interesting.
So clever though, clever.
And it's something that 99% of the people who watch the film would never even think about. They would just say it's period. It's a period film, and it features all these things. So it's crazy. And the fact that there's hardly any telephones in it as well. Occasionally you get a telephone, But it's just interesting stuff. Getting into these sort of things.
It really is. That's so, like, stuff like that just makes my wee brain tick in a good way. So that is everything for our 1995 retrospective on the Moviescramble podcast. If you have anything you'd like to say to us, whether that's films you'd like us to cover, anything you'd like to add to the discussion that we've had, you can find us on all the usual social channels, including Blue Sky, or you can email podcasts@moviescramble.co.uk. But until next time, it is goodbye from me. Bye.
Bye.